the other gentleman from New York, Mr. Zeldin, for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing. You can't defeat an enemy that you're not willing to define accurately. The President, in September of 2014, outlined a strategy to defeat ISIS. That strategy needs to evolve. In that strategy, that speech, he said that he was not going to have any boots on the ground. It was going to be a different strategy than past wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In the same exact speech, he announced that he was sending 495 additional troops to Iraq. Here, when Secretary Kerry was before the Foreign Affairs Committee hearing recently, he said there would be no offensive action, even though right now we're engaged in kinetic airstrikes. He later clarified we still have unanswered questions as far as what kind of flexibility and resources are going to be given to that commander on the ground to actually accomplish the mission. We're relying on Iraqi military and law enforcement to finish the job in destroying ISIS. Many of them don't even show up to work. Many of the Syrian rebels that we're relying on Syria aren't fighting ISIS. They're going after Assad, which wouldn't be such a bad thing if we took him out. The strategy needs to evolve. I guess just picking up right where Mr. Perry is leaving off, Ambassador Ford, if you were sitting in the Oval Office and President Obama was asking you for advice as to how to evolve the strategy to better defeat the threat, what would you tell him?
Find indigenous groups that will take the lead in combating the Islamic State in North Africa, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq. Indigenous. The American role should be supportive, but they need, A, to find indigenous fighters, and B, they need to address root causes. Let me give you an example.
What if you can't find indigenous forces?
Well, but I think you can. And I think, frankly, if you put the resources out there, you can develop the moderate forces. Can I give you an example of what I'm talking about? There's this is a widely known story in Syria, which frankly is where the capital of the Islamic State is now, in Raqqa. So there was a soccer player named Abu Basid Sadoud, a soccer player, well known in Syria. He joined the Islamic State after he had been fighting off the Assad regime for 2 years in Homs, saw people bombed, etc., starved because of the regime's brutality. He ended up joining the Islamic State. Syrian activists I know talked to him in January. The families know each other, and said, why would you join an awful organization like the Islamic State? What he said was, how dare you talk to me about human rights and democracy when you people in the West did nothing to help us when we were being bombed and ravaged by the brutal Assad regime. How dare you lecture me? That's what I mean, Congressman. We have to deal with the root causes of the conflict in a place like Syria or a place like Iraq.
Well, Ambassador, I don't know if we really have enough, if there is enough patience where eventually you're going to be able to turn the tide on ISIS. I think that we all need to be much more on our game. And when I say we, it's obviously not just the United States of America. Now, President Obama doesn't have the military experience that his two-star general on the ground has. No disrespect to him, President Bush before him, President Clinton before him. They don't have 6, 7 tours under their belt of commanding troops on the ground. Right now, we have thousands of American service members on the ground in Iraq. And when we had generals before our Foreign Affairs Committee hearing last week, and we were asking what kind of flexibility does that two-star have on the ground, if he knows where Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is, and he could send a Navy SEAL team to execute a well-planned mission at night under the cover of darkness to take out the leader of ISIS, or if there was great actionable intelligence where we knew where there was a boatload of computers, for example, what kind of flexibility does this two-star general have? And the general's answer back to me was reading a paragraph essentially saying that the two-star general can make a recommendation. Now, when I'm at events around my district and elsewhere, and I say, who was in charge of the surge in Iraq at the beginning of 2007, everyone says, Petraeus, Petraeus, Petraeus. How many of you know who the two-star general is who's in charge of our forces on the ground today? I've asked that question to members of Congress, and they don't know the answer to that. And that two-star general doesn't have the flexibility that they need to accomplish their mission to defeat the threat. Now, everything is being micromanaged in the White House. They send an authorization for the use of military force to Congress. We're expected to sign off on it to send our service members overseas. Right now, the 82nd Airborne Division, is preparing to go to Iraq. We want to know that we're setting them up to succeed and not fail and to actually defeat the threat. So what may be happening right now are, you might have examples in Iraq, for example, of where we are degrading the threat, taking out some of their command and control, killing some of their bad guys. We need to kill ISIS. We need to destroy them. The whole degrading thing, if we measure success, whether or not we kill a few of the bad guys, but meanwhile their ranks continue to grow, they become billions of dollars richer. Meanwhile, we're negotiating a nuclear arms race, a nuclear deal with Iran that might trigger a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. I'm concerned that this President's strategy is not evolving quick enough to actually defeat the threat, and the people on the ground don't have the ability that they need to take the action that will actually take out leadership when the opportunity presents itself. I asked that general to clarify. I was asking him a different question, and again, he was reading the same exact paragraph, that all he could do is make a recommendation. So here we are, we're facing a real threat that if we don't defeat them overseas, we'll be facing them here at home. We are literally, over the course of the last few weeks, we have gone after people who are now becoming, they are self-radicalized U.S. citizens who consider themselves to be citizens of the Islamic State. I believe that the President's strategy needs to evolve. We know what the threat is. Now we need to take it out. I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Zeldin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Keating was just asking about the social economics. My question, I just want to get to the heart, Doctor, of what is the most effective way to get inside the head of ISIS and demoralize them?
Well, that's a different battle, Mr. Congressman, from the interception I suggest, but I'll answer both. Pushing back against an individual who has already been radicalized is a much bigger mission. It would need a much larger mobilization. It needs for ISIS elements to feel that the people is against them and that the international community and the region are against them. So that responds to what the Congressman has mentioned about strategic communication. We need to do a better job. Our Arab broadcast, our Persian broadcast that the Congress funds here has not been doing, in my own view, enough to push back against these organizations. But I do propose that before these individuals are radicalized, this is where we need to interfere. When kids are 10 and 12 and 13, in a short 10 years, as in Afghanistan or as in Iraq and in Syria, they are the new ISIS. So we need to add and supply strategies that would help first women, their mothers, and teachers, and the NGOs to be part of this enterprise, not just on the military level, not just on the economic level, but on the educational level.
What is the most effective way, though, for those who are currently part of ISIS who are beheading individuals in their region? What is the best way to get into the head of ISIS and demoralize them?
Congressman, it's only a massive military defeat of large areas controlled by ISIS.
I totally agree with you.
Yes.
I mean, we could spend a lot of time here, talking about other elements of what we are up against. And we can have a hearing dedicated to talking about social economics. We can all admit that maybe there's something to do with the economy. That might have something to do with it. But the best way to get into the head of a member of ISIS is to put a round in it, is with lead. Honestly, they have to be defeated. That is what we're up against. And we can have a tremendous amount of patience waiting for someone else to fill this vacuum and step up in the region. But listen, when you want to be the leader of the free world, American exceptionalism isn't about figuring out a way to get everyone a job. King Abdullah of Jordan, when one of their pilots is executed, isn't filming a video to ISIS and the rest of the world how we need to get them more jobs. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, when he's giving a speech about what we do with our enemies around the world, it's not that we need to give them more wealth. I mean, we have to confront this threat. And honestly, if you want to demoralize them, if you want to defeat ISIS, it is not going to be done through social programs of giving people jobs and more wealth. The world needs America to lead. Now, it's our responsibility here to ensure that we are never setting our service members up to defeat. I do not support occupations enduring ground operations, but there's a big difference when you're talking about Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Green Berets, Marines, Army Rangers, who in the middle of the night under the cover of darkness, they're going to show up at areas where ISIS is operating, where ISIS is sleeping. and they are going to execute well-planned missions that is going to take out high-value targets and capture actionable intelligence. Our enemies do not respect weakness, they only respect strength. And strength cannot be shown just by finding jobs for more people who are members of ISIS. It is divorced from reality to spend time here talking about social economics as if that is the root of what we are up against and that is the way to turn the tide. We're all saying it's part of it. That might be why some people are getting involved in ISIS, might have something to do with economics. That's not going to eliminate the threat. Now, Madam Rajavi, listening to you speak and mentioning the Green Revolution back in 2009, and we think about the undemocratic elections that took place in Iran. At that point, when the economy was doing better and oil was $100 a barrel, and millions of Iranians were rising up to take control of their country. And our president was saying that that was none of our problem. Fast forward today when the economy is worse and oil is $50 a barrel, and people like you are showing leadership willing to take control of your own destiny. I honestly do not know whether or not my president is on the same exact team that I am. Because there are individuals like you who are willing to rise up and take control of your country's future and destiny with a vision, whether it is Iran or Syria or elsewhere, to bring stability to the Middle East. I commend you for being here and for leading your effort. I yield back the balance of my time.